Going live.
As Philip Schofield said many times.
There we go. We are going live. We are live on our monthly ADK chat. Of course, it's hello everyone. It's me, and of course, there's Andy, and there is Kirk.
We're all on
we have
time.
some guests. We do have some guests to bring in today. I'm going to bring them in one at a time, rather than bring them in all together and then try and go, "Hi, how you all doing?" and everyone talks over each other.
Maybe like the Big Brother, you know, when the guest comes in, they've got the 12, and then it's like, who's the secret guest? Is that
Who's the secret guest? They're not that secret, but I'm going to bring the first one in. Okay, let's bring them up on the screen. And the first guest is... Dun, dun, dun.
Goring.
We have. Let's see if he connects and it all goes well. Hey!
It is, it's Mike Goring, with his
Mike
sunglasses
Goring.
feature on.
Oh, yes.
You're the first to join. Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Good, man. How are you guys? Everyone all right?
Very well. So this is Mike from Kadama. Let's bring the next of our guests in. And hopefully turns his microphone on.
The man of many bands.
Hey, and our second guest, Mr. Richard Stevenson.
How's it going?
Hello,
Very well. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. How you doing?
Very good, very good. Joined any new bands recently?
Not yet. There's still time.
Well, I couldn't do the introduction of which band you're in, etc. But yes, we'll bring our third and final guest in to the room. Let's see them join. Dun, dun, dun. Well, the camera, there we go. Connecting to audio. Is there a camera? Hey, and here is our final guest, Mr. Nick Plews. How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, Nick.
Wonderful news. Who said hello?
Andy.
Oh, hi, Andy.
Right.
How you doing?
We're all well, I think.
No, I'm going to have to ask everyone individually if that's all right. Andy, tell me how you're doing. You all right?
I'm very well, thank you, sir.
Great. Richard, how you doing? You all right?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Yeah.
Mike, how you doing? You all right?
Fantastic, man.
Great. Kirk, how you doing? You all right?
Average.
Okay, we're going to have to start again.
Someone
now.
had to
How you doing, Dave? You good?
I'm very well, Nick. Thank you very much for asking. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm fine. By the way, I might have someone with me.
Oh, what? Don't
Yeah.
tell me you've got Rachel Aspler.
No, I've got Sheila Rosh.
Hey.
Hey, G, how you doing?
Yeah, not so bad. Drunk too much wine last night, so I'm just making up for it.
So she's the co-pilot, the whatever you call it.
You're interrupting our whiskey night.
Okay, we'll allow you to drink a little bit then.
We've interrupted your cockpit.
Okay, right. We should all be live. I'm just making sure everything seems to be connected. I'm just double checking a couple of things as we've now should be all on there. But bear with me one sec, and then we can get into it.
These things on.
Yes, we are on live. Right. Okay. So we have given you guys some questions that we're going to discuss, some topics. But before we get to that, I thought there was a couple of things I thought would be quite interesting to chat about. So on last week's monthly stream, we asked the guests and ourselves, we had two questions. One of them was, who is your favorite singer? So I want you to think about that. We're going to come back to you because it's interesting to find it. It doesn't have to be from rock or metal. It can be whoever it is your absolute favorite singer. We'd love to know that. And the other one is, who is your favorite Hertfordshire band at the moment? And you can't pick your own band.
Oof.
Now, Richard, that rules out most of
Yeah, no bands.
That's it. They're all terrible.
Shit. That's what I heard.
rubbish. But we're gonna come back to those questions for you a bit later on. Give you time to have a think about that one. But I thought a good question before we get to the ones I've sent you is, we're now halfway through the quarterfinals of Metal to the Masses for 2023. Kadama, you were in the final of 2022's. We had Dead Flesh in the semi-final, I believe, last year.
Yeah.
And Nick, obviously, you've been heavily involved in Metal to the Masses over the years.
Mm.
I wanted to get an idea particularly from Richard and Mike's point of view. What is it that bands will be going through the band's head now, going after a quarterfinal? So you've done your heat, you've got through your heat, you've got through your quarterfinal. What goes through the band's mind going into the semis? And then from Nick's point of view, when we come to you afterwards, I'd like to know from yours, what would you be suggesting to bands to be thinking about going into the semis? So, Mike, what was it like at Kadama, and what was going through your heads after the quarterfinals?
I think the main thing was just about building momentum and having fun with it, really. And we were kind of noticing, like, show to show, that we were trying to step it up each time. Even though each time we played, we were like, that's probably one of the best shows we played. We were like, how can we, bring it like an extra 10% next time, just to try and get our message across and get what we're doing across in the best way possible. So I think, like, for the bands going through at the moment, it is all about trying to forget about the competition element and just taking it. I've got a next show coming up. Like, the last one was awesome. Let's ride that energy and just keep it going, kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I've got to say, just sorry to butt in, that yes, spot on, Mike. That's exactly what it's about.
Mm.
And how was it for Dead?
Obviously, it's nice when you go through, obviously, but it's yeah.
So yeah, with Dead Flesh, obviously, because Dead Flesh was a newish band at that time last year as well. So going from Heat quarterfinal, what was going through the Dead Flesh guys' heads getting ready for a semi-final?
I think just making sure that we did the best show that we could do, obviously going from round to round or whatever, it was it's always pretty nerve-wracking, but just giving it, even if especially if you're one of the bands that performs in the beginning of the night, like the first or the second band on, but playing as if we were the headline band, so to speak, and just doing our best, really. That's what that was our aim. Yeah.
And is there that temptation, I guess, in a band to suddenly go, well, it worked in the Heat and it worked in the quarterfinals, so we'll stick to our set? Or is it a case of you kind of go, do you know what, we need to throw something brand new in there, we want to do something completely different in the next set, just to kind of give us a factor? What's kind of the viewpoint on that?
I've always said to the guys, in my opinion, was to do the same set each time, and because rather than trying to throw something new in, it could be disastrous, if you haven't rehearsed it enough. And having that element of knowing exactly what you're doing down to a T is probably quite important in this sort of competition sense and being at your peak. So that was where my head was at in terms of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think show to show, there's advantages to both. As Rich was saying, when you're well oiled, you know exactly what to expect from your set list, and it's you're going to give the best performance possible. But for the returning people who are coming heat to heat, even if it's just a little order switch up or something different, or just throwing in an intro track, or just something that's oh, that's a little bit different, kind of makes people who are into what you're doing go, oh, that's cool as well. So, but Rich is right. You definitely don't want to be okay, we're gonna throw in this song we wrote last week in something like that. It's just not worth doing. But,
right. So, Nick, any other advice that you would be talking to bands sort of going for semi-final coming up? What's to get the best experience, the best chances to go forward? As we know, it's more judge voted or steered towards the judges' scored.
With the semis, it's slightly more in favour of the judges and the audience. But I think what Mike and Richard said is interesting, kind of two similar takes, but also slightly different takes on it. So playing it safe is what you need to be doing. Obviously, you don't mean pushing the envelope too hard, where you end up doing something that maybe hasn't been rehearsed enough or whatever. But at the same time, you want to put something in there that's slightly different if you're returning, especially if you've done Melts Masters a few times as well. So if you've been back a few years on the trot, you need to turn it up a notch. But yeah, it's just making sure you deliver the best possible set, which I know sounds painfully obvious, but that's what it's about. But I think advice for bands from me is that even if you don't get through, it's about learning from that experience and how you can improve. So it's all about getting feedback of other people. It's about chatting to people in the audience, chatting to the organisers, and just having fun with it. And if you get through, that's a bonus, and you learn from it, and you basically take what you've learned and improve your own performance, improve your band, and just put that into your rehearsal, take it to live events, and just run with it. I think it's the perfect environment for that, for just building on what you've already done and improving it. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking off that, Nick, that was pretty much our experience as a band. Like all of those shows were probably the best shows I've ever played in terms of, as you say, like networking, getting to a broad audience, people getting into your band. Like it was really, really amazing for that. So even if you don't get through XYZ heat or whatever, like it's always good for your band and you're, you know, getting your message out there. So
yeah, you're basically pressure testing it. You're pressure testing it with an audience. You're pressure testing it with people. You know, there's judges there. Their job is to judge the band. You know, and we try to make it as fair as possible with different categories for different aspects of what they're looking at. And then the audience vote is as fair as it can be with like a first choice, second choice, and there's a load of maths that the team do in the background to kind of work out the exact scores. Each event has a score sheet which is evidenced and kept on file if anyone's got any questions about, you know, how it works. Everything's there in black and white. It's not just someone's opinion going, yeah, them. You know, it's all there across multiple boards, across multiple people, but two separate things: audience votes and judges. So I think it's as fair as possible, and get that feedback and just work on it. Take it to the rehearsal space and go, right, well, they said, you know, maybe the guitar tone is a bit, you know, is a bit ropey, needs to be, you know, beefier, or you know, the drums need to tighten, or whatever it may be. I'm just picking stuff out of the sky here, but you know, why not take that and run with it and improve it? And what better environment to pressure test your art? Yeah.
There we go. Some feedback for those bands that are competing. So we've got 2 more quarterfinals to go, and then of course on to the semis. We're going to go into some questions of some topics that we've got. So I'm going to come back to this one about the touring and musician one that Nick, you raised, which I thought was a good point. I'm going to get you to kind of bring this topic up in a minute because you can probably explain it a little bit more than I probably wrote it down at. But before we get to that one, we're going to talk about a topic that's close to mine and Kirk's heart: alternative metal genre. So we're going to give you 2 steers, and Andy, we're going to get you to make the final judgment call on this about whether or not the alternative metal genre should be allowed to be used in future discussions. So I'm going to take there's 2 points on this one, and we're going to get Mike, Richard, Nick, and G to all have your own viewpoints on this and share. But we're going to take 2 stances. Me and Kirk have a very different opinion about alternative metal. So my steer on this is we've had this phrase alternative metal come up quite a lot of the time since whatever year it was in the early 90s. I'm guessing it was when it kind of started coming out. Kirk will get into a lot more detail, I'm sure, on this. But it's alternative metal is an alternative to what? Is what my first question kind of came to my head is when people get told about and they use that as a genre, that this band is alternative metal. That gives me no explanation about it. And in my head, it's just a cop-out where people can't be bothered to explain what this band actually sounds like. So we shouldn't be using it. And my guess is that it was used at a time when the amount of genres of metal, there weren't as many. If you're thinking early 90s, we hadn't got through new metal. We hadn't got really grunge had only recently just come out. We hadn't got deathcore, metalcore, mathcore. So there was a whole load of new genres have since come out, and crossover genres have now happened where people talk about funk metal and all sorts of other stuff that go into it. So in my opinion, alternative metal should not be allowed to be used anymore because it doesn't give me any description, doesn't allow me to explain what it's all about. And I think it should just be stopped being used to describe bands. Kirk, I'm going to let you take the opposite viewpoint and explain about alternative metal then.
Yeah, so I need to give the alternative viewpoint, don't I? So one accusation that I've heard leveled against alternative metal, and it probably does apply to me, is that it's an elitist term that allows Faith No More fans to describe their music without them being associated with new metal, which they went on to influence with the likes of Primus and Rage Against the Machine, even the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Helmet, bands like that. So I think it's important to define what I believe alternative music is. And if we look at the 1980s, I think there's 2 bullet points here. One, you might be on a major label, but you're certainly not writing bubblegum pop music for the radio, but your songs end up becoming hits. And 2, I think it's important, most of these bands do have a grounding in punk, which, as we know, post-punk, industrial, and so many different subgenres, even new romantic comes from punk music. So alternative to me are bands like The Cure and Depeche Mode, and you could even say early U2. These were bands that were clearly writing music with choruses, and they were played on radio, but there was a lot of depth to them emotionally, even intellectually. and some of them were quite political. So even though they were the mainstream, they were certainly not using the industry way to do that, where you have a team of songwriters or you have a major label saying, you know, you need to be writing hit singles. The mainstream came to them, didn't it? So alternative metal probably does start with Faith No More. But I want to skip forward to 2022 and 23. If it does exist, who are the bands? And I would have to say Spirit Box. If you think about it, this is a band that are clearly influenced by Björk and Portishead and Depeche Mode, and then clearly they're influenced by Meshuggah and Periphery and Tesseract and bands like that. So I do think alternative metal does exist, and it's not a new metal revival. They're not metalcore bands, even though obviously Courtney from Spirit Box is on record saying that Spirit Box are a metalcore band. I don't agree with her on that. And then we also have this other curveball, is that what the Americans say? You know, we've got new metalcore, which again, I don't think Code Orange is a new metal band. So before I hand it over, I am aware of why we have to use this retrospectively now, because if you're a fan of Faith No More, you do not want that band to be associated with new metal and all these bands that they influence, because they hate it. And also, I do think it does exist. Dave doesn't. I don't think it's a cop-out. Time for me to hand over to the rest of you guys to have your say.
I'm going to throw it to Nick and G to have your few points on this. What do you believe in it?
You can go first, G.
I'll say something. So my question would be, how many subgenres do you want? Because I don't know if you're familiar with No Such Thing as a Fish, which is the QI spin-off podcast where they give. Now they did a special on heavy metal, and they claimed that heavy metal has the most amount of subgenres of any wider genre. So, you know, they listed loads and loads off, and so what point, like you could take, say, White Zombie, you could call them B-movie metal, and then you could take Primus and call it slap-based metal. You know, are you just getting into the point where there's just ridiculous amounts of subgenres where it's just getting ridiculous? What alternate metal can do, though, it can allow you to change your sound. If you're in a band that considers yourself alt metal, and you've got one album that is like White Zombie, is 50s B-movies samples, but then the next album, like you mentioned Faith No More, a lot of their albums are quite different to the last. So if you were to say they were a funk band at first, that's not what they were later on. So alt metal gives that them breathing space to be more creative and come up with different sounds, different ideas. And I personally don't have a problem with the alt is never kept me awake at night. It might do now.
Yeah, I think that's it now. You're going to be sitting there pondering, but is it alt metal?
So I have no issues with it.
Are you alt metal?
I might be alt metal.
Right, okay, I knew it.
So carry on with the alt metal, that's fine. Why not?
Okay. What do you reckon, Nick?
Oh, yeah. I mean, all the subgenres and stuff, I know it's a thing. I know everyone's obsessed with pigeonhole and stuff, but yeah, I don't know. I with alt metal, I don't know. I don't think I care enough. Because I just listen to something and go, that's good. That sounds a bit metally. That does. The end. And I think I kind of respect bands that kind of go outside the box. I suppose it's the alternative version of metal, but there's so many alternative versions of metal. It's like, where does it go? There's so many pigeonholes. It's like we run out of pigeons.
Can I just add that when I'm talking to someone and they're describing their bands and they're like, we're a bit funk, but we've got some doom, and then we're death, and I get a bit bored halfway through their listing their various influences, and I was like, just call yourself alt metal.
Well, yeah, there's that. Think about a lot of the bands.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah.
A lot of the bands from the 90s, for example, or even the 80s, were doing stuff that weren't put in a pigeonhole. They just played music that was heavy. And then everyone's ended up having to pigeonhole them. I must come up with where does this fit? Why do you have to do that? Just enjoy it. It's a bit of a hippie answer from me, but I kind of mean it. You know, I think when I was younger, I used to kind of obsess over this and think, where does it fit? I think now I'm just like, it's cool. Yeah, go for it.
Personally, love bands that don't sit in a pigeonhole. The more different they sound, the more interested I am.
Yeah. I just want to enjoy it. Like, for example, there's one band I'm really into at the moment. Do you know Moontooth?
What are they called?
Moontooth.
I've heard the name.
Right. So the new album Phototroph is very difficult to pigeonhole, funny enough. It kind of spans. It's like heavy rock with a bit of metal on top. Could be alt metal. Oh, check it out. But I tell you what, stop putting the whiskey near me. Just put that. It's such a blinding, refreshing album. I can't put it in a pigeonhole, which I thoroughly enjoy. And I don't want someone to come along and put it in that pigeonhole. I'm quite happy with it floating around the pigeonhole.
What they called it? Moontooth, did you say?
Yeah, Moontooth, and the album is Phototrough. They've got a few albums, but this new album, honestly, it's everything from. It's got like put the whiskey on. It's it's the sun is beaming through.
It's Nick's halo.
Very good. It's a sideways halo. It comes from my ear. I can't put it anywhere. It kind of spans from like Mastodon mixed with Faith No More, mixed with almost like pop in places. I don't know. It's all over the place, but it is fantastic and very refreshing to listen to. And I think they just labelled themselves as either alt rock or something. I don't know. I haven't really looked into it because I like it. I'm gonna have to sort this sun out, mate. It's doing my head in.
Sun out. Okay, Mike, what's your thoughts on this?
I mean, I very much resonate with what the guys were saying. That was pretty much bang on what I was going to talk about already. It's the whole, subgenres, categories, having to put bands into their little box, and especially with modern heavy music, there's so many different sounds happening. As Kirk was talking about with Spirit Box and all these modern metal bands, it's like, at what point, I wouldn't be mad if someone said, okay, this is Spirit Box, they're an alternative metal band, and I went to see them. I go, okay, that's an okay description for them. I'm not angry at it. But I also wouldn't be surprised if somebody said, this is Spirit Box, they're a gent band. I'd be like, yeah, I can hear that. And even if someone said they're a metalcore band, I go, well, for me, I definitely wouldn't describe them that way. But if that's how they're describing themselves, especially, then, especially if the band or the artist is saying, okay, we're this, there is some level of like, okay, I respect what you're describing yourself as well. So, but yeah, I'm definitely not on your level, Dave, where if I hear the term alt metal, that I'm going crazy. Like, it doesn't really bother me that much. So, genuinely, but
okay, fair enough. Richard,
but you're fully entitled to feel that way about it as well. So it's.
To be honest, I quite enjoy like all the sort of subgenres and figuring out which bands kind of. I liken it to sort of thinking about like movie genres. Like I like knowing what I'm getting into. So like if I want to go see a movie, I like knowing that it's going to be like a comedy or a horror or something. And I'm like the same with bands. Like if I go to a lineup, I like knowing kind of what I'm getting myself into, like sort of what to expect almost. Obviously you can get like really nitpicky with it and get into like subgenres, but like overall I like sort of vaguely knowing where I'm headed because like I personally, I don't know about you guys, but there are like quite specific subgenres that I like really, really like, and then the sort of vaguely related genre like I might not like so much. And so, if I'm going to like one or the other, I kind of like to know generally sort of like which way it's heading. Unless, I go and see a band and they sound good, which happens all the time. And then I don't really care what genre they are.
Right.
So,
you notice that in this day and age, which I think is a fantastic time to be alive in music, is that there's so many bands that cross so many subgenres. And it's and it's so many subgenres, you just eventually just have to go, it is metal.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you just start calling a metal band, and then
I think it's going full circle a bit. And I've just looked at Moontooth, and they just call themselves rock.
Yeah.
Do you think?
What a crazy term!
The widest umbrella you could ever get.
It's a massive umbrella. It's like,
Do you think the Metal Archives website has the final say on what genre they are, because they always put a genre on?
Someone in there.
If you're a deathcore band, you do not end up on Wikipedia Metallic.
Yeah,
you're not allowed on there.
Yeah,
no.
There's someone in a shed, like locked away in a shed, who makes these decisions.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking because I was at a death metal show the other day at New Cross Inn, and it was literally a whole day of death metal bands, like old school death metal bands, and I was like, I knew what I was getting into, really, and like all the bands are going to sound really similar, and I was really happy with that. Really enjoyed it, and there weren't any like deathcore bands there or anything, for example, but not that I would have minded, but
No, I know what you mean, because it's like to someone listening from the outside, it all sounds like metal.
Yeah.
But we you know, once you're involved in it, you kind of go, well, actually, that sounds a bit like you say metalcore-y, or that death metal band's got that lot of black metal influence there, or whatever it may be. But yeah, what like you say, you go to these kind of events at the New Cross, and you just what it does, what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
Just maximum blast beats and people being really angry.
On that, I get really irritated when people misdiagnose a metal band. When Napalm Death were on, I'm going back away. Was it TFI Friday? Chris Evans, and he introduced them as a thrash metal band, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
Well, it's like Pantera with the original videos, and they're talking about being magazines and they're called thrash metal. And like, no, we're groove metal.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. And even back then, they'll go, no, we're not thrash, we're not Slayer. You know, we are this. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
It's definitely an issue when it's completely kind of interpreted as something else. But if it's like kind of loosely, you could hear what it might be. Then it's like, okay, I can kind of. I'm not too.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too sort of mad if it was like, you know, just a loose kind of connection there. But when it's complete opposite, it's like, no, it's not that.
Anyone outside the metal community doesn't really give a fuck.
Well, to be honest, outside the metal community, there's one term that should be banned, which is screamo. Someone says you're in a screamo band.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not even a thing, dude.
Yeah.
No. Like, honestly, it makes my whenever I hear someone say it.
Yeah, it makes me scream.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's like that, you know, that up and coming band Metallica, is it called?
Never heard of them.
No. I think they're death metal or something. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. We should throw this to Andy. Andy, you've heard everyone's viewpoint on the alternative metal genre description. So what do you reckon about the whole thing? Should we get rid of it, keep it?
Well, it's a really interesting discussion, isn't it? After yours and Kirk's sort of summary of the sort of both sides of the argument, I was siding towards you, Dave, where it is a cop-out. There are enough genres where you can pigeonhole, as people have mentioned, a particular band. But then I was listening interestedly to what G said about how many subgenres do you get? I mean, was it Prong you described as sort of slap-based metal? You know, that is almost unique to them. So it doesn't really help other bands sort of fall into that category. But also like the idea that if you do call yourself alternative, you've got that scope and availability to make different types of music on subsequent albums. You're not stuck in the same sort of genre. So I think there are enough enough terms where you can actually sort of combine two or three to give somebody who may be interested in what you're talking about an idea of what this particular band sounds like. But I don't like the term alternative metal. I think if it's difficult to do that particular sort of summary of somebody, just call them metal and let the listeners sort of make up their own mind. I think alternative kind of is a little bit elitist, but if you're definitely not thrash, you're definitely not black, you're definitely not doom, and you're not a combination of some of those subgenres, metal is a perfect description. And then if somebody listens to them,
I agree with that.
If this is a term we use for Faith No More, then, and we're not using alternative metal, I guess we're just gonna have to call them avant-garde metal, which nobody called them at the time.
I mean, I would almost
Banning avant-garde metal as well. No, that's going.
I was going back in the day. That used to describe a lot of albums. You guys may or may not remember this, but I used to get sort of mailing lists and catalogs sent out monthly from various sort of album distributors, and you go through it, and there'd be the black metal section, and then underneath there'd be avant-garde black metal. And to me, that just sounded as if it's black metal, but a little bit weird, a little bit sort of out there.
It's super arty. It's
a little bit sort of unstructured and maybe just sort of trying to do something a little bit sort of arty.
Yeah, that's
rather
it.
than being true to that genre. So I don't like avant-garde either. So metal or one of the genres or a combination of genres and subgenres to give an accurate or a reasonably accurate description of whatever band sounds like or whatever album it is you're reviewing. But
Fair enough. I mean, I think there are also multiple other genres you could talk about this in the similar sort of concept about whether they should be allowed. Because if you were to talk about like doom, when I sort of get like the new album releases and we're going through it and it comes up, it's doom metal, I know exactly what that's pretty much going to sound like. when it says it's a thrash metal band, it's a thrash metal, you know what you're going to get with that. If it's groove metal, black metal, you can pretty much just by that genre description know. And if they sort of say groove black metal, you kind of get a vague idea of what that's going. But when they say avant-garde metal or alternative metal, you're like, that could be anything. I have absolutely no idea.
I think it's less appealing in a way as well when you hear that. It's like
you've got to have these genres or subgenres put out there because it's part of the marketing, as you say. So if you're marketing yourself as a thrash band, fine. But what I'm saying is, how far does it go? That's all. And I think there should be at least 5,000 more subgenres by next week.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I tend to think of I tend to associate alternative metal with new metal. Really, those types of bands. That's kind of where I would pigeonhole.
Yeah, well, alternative is like new.
The 90s kid in me is going to kick off.
Same here. Pretty good.
There's a bit of a resurgence as well in like modern metal with like new metal tendencies, I think, with like a lot of the popular modern metal bands. So yeah, that's.
I've discovered Gore Pig recently, and they're kind of, as they sound, they're very kind of gore grind, but they have elements of new metal, which actually I will say kind of works quite well in their favour. I've really been digging that. That's my
your top tip for the day.
Getting some good recommendations on this stream.
Yeah, round down.
Let's move on to our next question. So I'm going to throw it over to Nick, because you raised a good question around musicians managing with touring, writing, holding down day jobs. Do you want to elaborate about this topic?
Yes, I think, to be honest, you've summed it up pretty well, but it's how we play in bands or write in bands or whatever, involved in a band in one way or another, playing your instrument, having a good time and doing a day job. It's all about that balance that I think most of us can relate to, or all of us can relate to in one way or another. Even if your job is in the industry, you've still got to juggle it. I think it's how you go about that. How do you get that balance? You know, and is it something that is a struggle, or you found the balance, or what? You know, it's a bit of an open-ended question, but have I elaborated enough, Dave?
Yeah, that sounds a good start. So, yeah, because I mean, one of the things I would suppose is the biggest challenge is nowadays with bands, now that you don't really earn any money from music, because you have to give it away for free on Spotify. And you still got to do the music videos, and they cost you money, and then you got to go on tour, and you got to try and get people out to watch you, and then you got all the expenses still. So it's become a very expensive thing that you don't get as much return. So everyone's now, you're finding more and more professional musicians are having to effectively do the day job as well, like a normal job the rest of the time, and then they're not touring, and obviously cost the rehearsal. So for the guys here, I guess specifically like you guys, so Gene, Nick, Mike, and Richard, this is probably a bit more pertinent than it is probably for me, Andy, and Kirk. But so how do you manage it? So I'm gonna throw it straight over back to Nick for this one, because obviously with Cage Fight and you were the best.
So G and I's band Raise the Devil, which was the Best Medicine, now recently Raise the Devil. Obviously Cage Fight's quite busy. Either being I've just got back from Holland or Netherlands, so I should say. Even though I found out that it is technically Holland. Did you know about this? Does anyone know about why it suddenly went from Holland to Netherlands? Does anyone know?
I bet Kirk does.
No, you told. I've had a conversation with someone when I was drunk, and apparently I was wrong calling it Holland. But okay.
Well, yeah. Well, so because when I was growing up, it was always called Holland. Like the football team was Holland. It was always called Holland. And then suddenly, no, it's Netherlands. And the north of Netherlands is Holland. Amsterdam, Rotterdam is Holland. I drove past a sign that said "Welcome to Holland." That's because it's basically like calling England Yorkshire. It's basically what. And the Dutch went, no, hang on a minute. No, we're actually called the Netherlands. It's the whole thing is the Netherlands, and the north of it is the Holland.
Famously, he's upset. Dutch, aren't they?
Are they? No. I thought it was going to be a story then. But yeah, where I was going with this question is, I think it's just a discussion really for those that trying to hold down a job whilst in doing what you enjoy in music. Because as we know, being in a band, you're not just, it's a lot of work, isn't it? Right?
Oh, yeah.
Let's be honest, it's a lot of work. Not just playing, but it's a lot of it's admin.
Yeah.
A lot of it's the stuff behind the scenes.
And the in-between stuff is the most time consuming element, really.
Yeah.
100%. And you've got
That
the
half an hour to 45 minutes play on stage is like, this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Like, the in-between stuff is like, I'm literally grafting so hard and putting so many hours into this. It's like
100%. And also you've got, 3 or 4 other band members to pin down to try and align diaries with. And they may be local, they might be further afield. How do you pin those people down to get rehearsals in, to get gigs under your belt, to just make sure you're all singing from the same hymn sheet, you're all kind of aligned with your kind of drive and what you're trying to achieve? It is bloody hard work. And obviously I've been in and out of bands for years. And when I was younger, that was really difficult because I think you're still kind of building on those skills, those organizational skills and communication skills, anything else. And I think now I've found like that kind of, I found my stride with it and got that balance right with having quite a, at times, stressful day job and challenging day job, which I enjoy. And then the my muggle job, the normal job. And then in the nighttime, I scuttle away into the darkness.
yeah.
And it's it's just interesting to kind of hear other people's opinions on how that works for you and maybe struggles you've had before and how it feels right now or in the future or what. It's a bit of a open-ended question.
Richard, do you want to jump in on that one? Because you've got multiple band experiences to talk about, I guess.
Yeah.
Can you just tell our viewers which band you're in as well?
Yeah, so we're playing.
We haven't got that long.
We haven't got that long. Go through the list. At the moment, it's Deadflesh, Praetorian, Lowen, and Dreadbeggar. Those are and then I've got like a studio thing that I do at home, which is Somber. But I don't really count that as like a live act. But so it's the 4 like live bands that I do at the moment. Yeah. But man, yeah, busy. Most of the time. Or it tends to find that it goes from kind of one month or 1 week it'll be like I'll have something on like almost every day, and then another month I'll have like nothing on at all. Like the next coming few weeks I haven't really got much on going on at all. So it kind of really varies depending on what we're doing. But yeah, trying to keep up with it all is and do like work full time is a bloody struggle. I can say that much. But I think I don't probably spend enough time doing like the admin stuff for each of the projects, especially the ones that I do myself. Whereas I probably should. But yeah, it's basically another full-time job, like being in a band, really, if you want to do it properly.
That's what I was getting at, because we do it because we love it, right?
Yeah,
we love it, and at the end of the day, sometimes it's pain. But in the grand scheme of things, it's something that we enjoy. We're passionate about it, and I think if that wasn't there, my life would be totally different. It wouldn't be as enjoyable as it is, and it's like that because other people say to me, "How do you do it? How do you do it?" And I don't have an answer for them. It just happens. Like I say, I think it's just years of doing it, and you find this kind of way of doing it. And I think there's no answer to that. It's just an interesting point. How do we do it?
May I interject in front of everyone?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
I think that is it though. Like if you're that passionate about something, you can find a way to get it done. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You love doing it, but you can always
call it a hobby, or whether you think it's another kind of job on the side. Now, I know a lot of bands don't really make money off it, but as far as hobby goes, it's very time consuming. And if you booked a gig, you've got to be there. You can't go, I'm just going to fuck that off for the day. A little story. I don't know if you guys know, I used to be a plumber, like for a couple of years, a terrible plumber. But I was doing a job like
you got business
2 hours drive. Terrible. So, like, the first ever immersion heat that I had to do, it was basically pissing water all over the top floor, and I had a gig, and I was saying to my boss, I need to go and play this gig. I'm not going to make it, and that was the point. He said to me, "You're not right for this job if you've got to leave a leak to go and do a show." So kind of on what Nick was saying, you kind of have to find a job that's flexible enough where you can do your band stuff and you can make sure you can get away from your job, especially if you're going abroad, especially if you're got to be at sound check at 6 o'clock in the evening. It's the balance, and if you love your hobby or your job enough, then you'll make your job work for that.
Yeah, and it can be a real struggle for people that and I think I feel I feel blessed to be in a position where I have that flexibility on the job side. Not always, but sometimes. And it's always about that forward planning, isn't it? And if you're good at organising stuff, you can look into a month, 2 months, 6 months in the future and go, I'm probably going to have to leave work. I've got that festival. I'm on stage at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a 2 hour drive away, or it's a 6 hour drive away, or it's a flight away, or something. It's like how you work back to go, well, I need to take that time off there. I need to leave work at that time. It's all about that forward planning. And I think that I'm as I say, I'm blessed to be in a position where I can be flexible. But I think when I was younger, this was stuff I wasn't good at. So you'd end up double booking a gig with another band, or you can't get off work, and it all goes absolutely, peak time.
It's essentially another talent you have to build on.
Yeah.
Balancing your work career with your hobby, with your band.
Yeah.
No one else here is plumbers, are they?
I don't my own house.
Is that leak still happening, or should we go fix it? Is someone like drowning somewhere?
I believe the house has been demolished now.
Oh, okay.
Well, I just want to build on that last one that you guys are talking about. So we've talked about obviously the job, trying to balance that out and making sure it's the right career. Now, obviously, you've got your rehearsals, you've got writing, you've got your gigging, you've got your logistics of trying to plan that in with your job. But how about for you guys? How's it worked as far as managing your personal relationships at the same time? Because this is a huge thing. I find it as well from doing the band, doing the A.D.K channel, doing the videography work when I'm doing video shoots, and also doing a full-time job and being married. We talked a lot about the job and the career and the thing. We haven't talked about the wives and the partners and what the impact is on that.
Yeah, I was going to say that I proposed at Christmas and she said yes, and she knows exactly what I do. So
start the band before you get married.
I've had conversations with partners before, and they've said like, you are not going to join another band. And I've just been like, what if I really want to join another band? Like,
and you said you are not my partner.
yeah, and I'm like, well, shit.
But no, it is true. You do need to have people around you like understanding the amount of time you're going to put into something, really.
And bloody good at spinning plates as well. I think if you've got that kind of skill set to be able to spin those plates with personal life or friends or whatever. I think a lot of my friends now are in the bands I'm in because the rest of them got fed up with me.
It's very stressful. It's stressful and it shows. He's 21.
Yes.
I mean, Andy, for yourself, obviously with Nomadic Rain as well, now you're obviously doing the A.D.K stuff as well. So how do you manage that with your partner?
Yeah, she's very understanding. I mean, I was going to say, I wish I was in Richard's predicament, as in having so much to do. You have to spin plates. I wish I was busy on the band front, but I've got a lot going on in addition to Nomadic Rain. I'm involved in football clubs. I've got children and stepchildren and all the things we do on the channel. But yeah, Leslie's really understanding regarding, going to gigs, going to practice, going to rehearsals, going to writing sessions. But it is the balance, isn't it? And as Nick said, it's forward planning, bit of compromise at times, and just, it's a skill. It's a skill you need to bring into the situation as well. Organising your time, good time management.
Yeah, that's it. And don't rush it either. So I think what happens, I've seen happen to people is they rush a situation. They've got to do this. They sacrifice the job to do this. They come back to no job, for example. So let's say they've got this awesome gig, once a lifetime opportunity, and then they come back and they've got to start again. It's all about getting that balance right of making sure that you're working and living within those parameters. And you can push the envelope at times, but you've got to make sure that balance is right. So your normal life and your band life, are working in harmony with each other. But if you have a tour come up that's with like your favorite band and you go on tour for 6 months, then that's slightly different. You only live once. Yeah. You know what I mean? But again, it's easy for me to say that. I don't have kids. If like Andy, you were saying you've got those responsibilities, I don't. So my opinion would probably change if that was a situation. But right now, something came up. I wouldn't necessarily sacrifice, my work for that at all, unless it was something absolutely biblically insanely good. Because in my head, is that worth it? Would I be coming back to a whole load of shit? You know what I mean?
Adding on that, I'm always aware of bands that have that are notorious for cancelling gigs, which is a real bugbear of mine. I
Yeah.
think if you book the gig, you do the gig.
Yeah.
And I know lots of promoters will agree with me. This is to everyone. You book the gig, you do the gig.
Well, unless it's a really good reason, but I think
Well, yeah,
what
that's
you're-
in the family.
What you're
all
getting
that
at is
sort of
if someone, which I think you've had recently, which I've had before, is someone's got a work problem that's come up, and that's where, everyone's got something that
stuff.
could.
No, do the gig.
The league will fix itself. Don't worry.
Yeah, leave it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just about,
Yeah.
as I say, it's about not jumping on opportunities unless everyone can definitely do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you let down everyone, and then your band name will end up being slightly dragged through that mud, even if it's not your fault as a person. It might be someone else's. You know what I mean?
A lot of promoters talk to each other. If you've been cancelling gigs, you will get a bad reputation and people will stop booking you.
Yeah, it's a one-off, and these things happen, isn't it?
No, of course.
But yeah, if it's like a serial canceller.
I disagree.
Yeah, it seems like there's a fine balance between pissing everyone off, really. Like, you don't want to piss your family off, you don't want to piss your partner off, you don't want to piss your friends off, and you don't want to piss your bands off and promoters off. So just spinning those plays, that's what it's all about.
In cage fight,
Whilst walking a tightrope at the same time.
Yeah, literally.
in cage fight, it'll be the chat is a constant. I'm sure all the band chats, it's just constant flow of stuff. Whether it be talking about merchandise, gigs, festivals, or whatever it may be. If something comes up that one of us can't do, it's either in the diary that one of us is busy on that day, or if it hasn't been added, we'll all check. And it's not a problem, If someone says I can't do it, it's like, yeah, no worries. Move on to the next one. It's not why can't you do it? No, you've got to do this gig. And it's that kind of like mentality in this band that I absolutely love, is that we've all had that understanding that we've all got these responsibilities that we have outside of music, and we've all got to be happy going into a show, and no one's got to feel like they're doing something which is they've had to cancel something important to do the gig, that kind of thing. Everyone's got to be happy with it, and everyone's got to be in agreement that it's the right decision to make. There's not that pressure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
When we spoke before to Richard,
Can I just come in on a philosophical angle on this?
No.
Is it about old metal?
It's definitely not about that. So I'm interested because you five are all artists, you're all playing bands. And I suppose one question you will ask yourself is, what career opportunities have you had to forfeit to pursue something that you love that is never going to make you money? Because let's quote the singer from Black Crown Initiative, James Dawson, who said, death metal does not pay the bills. Now, other than Metallica and Iron Maiden and AC/DC and a handful of bands from heavy guitar music who are as rich as anyone, even in the 90s when CD sales defined a band and major labels signed artists looking at how many units they could shift, we're beyond that era now, aren't we? So clearly you're doing something because you want some kind of recognition, and that's not a bad thing, right? You write music, you perform art because you need to do it. And you could not be a heart surgeon and be in a grindcore band, or you could not be a barrister and be in a band that's on a major label. You just could not mix those things. So you've had to give up opportunities. But the way you look at the world is different to somebody who defines himself from the socioeconomic status that comes with a high salary and being part of the establishment, and someone who's likely to get a peerage who might go into politics. You're not doing that, are you? You feel the need to express yourself, and you're not even writing mainstream music, any of you. So my
We've all dropped out of life.
The point is here. Do you ever
There is a question
do you ever look at it like that? What opportunities have you had to forego to continue why you're doing it, and why do you do it? You've got to ask, why do I do this?
That's the longest way of getting to that question.
I really like the long words.
I'm gonna ruin what you've said, Kirk, and say that I haven't turned down any career opportunities because of music. I've somehow managed to make it work alongside, and I don't know how I have, but I have. And so I work in education. I manage a college basically, so it's quite a pressuring job, but I absolutely love it. But I've just found the balance right. So I've never turned down any career prospects because of music. I've just made music work around the career. And being a drummer, it's like I help out with a lot of stuff behind the scenes. But if you've got a well-oiled machine as a band, if you're on a label like Cage Fight and Candlelight Spine Farm, you've got all that stuff going on behind. You've got a bit of a machine behind you. The merch is churning over. As long as we're keeping our eye on the ball, and the band becomes self-sufficient, then it's an absolute winner.
Well, I think you and I are quite fortunate with that, really. That your work is understanding of your next life, your alternative.
Yeah.
Yeah, not everyone's fortunate.
No, that's what I said earlier.
For them.
I said I'm blessed to be in that position, but yeah.
No,
Carry
it's
on.
a good viewpoint that Kirk's brought up, to be honest. But I think that, it could be dangerous to go down that thought process because, I don't know, it's better to not have any sort of regrets of like, oh, I could have been doing this, could have been doing that. It's all about what makes me tick, what makes me happy, what makes me feel alive in what I'm doing. And ultimately that is playing the music that we're playing. So it's,
And
the things you don't do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The things that you could have done that you should have done. And I think that's what stresses us out the most. But as long as you made that calculated decision to not do it for a particular reason, then it shouldn't stress you out. And if you've taken that opportunity and gone for it, then happy days. But yeah, I think it's because, in being band stuff is a nighttime activity most of the time, isn't it? It only leaks into the afternoon when you've got to get to Loading at 5 somewhere or in the evening. You're on touring, you booked that time off. It wasn't a surprise tour, it was planned in a surprise. It was planned in advance to a point. So you've managed to work your life around that tour and you've booked things off in accordance with the times that you need to be on the tour for. So as long as you're all right at that, you can balance it.
I think I always seem to have kind of the vague hope that maybe one of the bands will like take off and become one of those next big bands that will be completely self-sufficient and make loads of money and not have to worry about a day job. But I think lots of people have that kind of vague hope in mind with all of the bands that they do. I know I do. But however,
if you're on tour all the time. So let's say if you're an American band, you just tour the States constantly. Like for example, Black Dahlia Murder, they're on the road for months, and they had a salary. They paid themselves a salary from it.
Yeah.
It's one way of doing it, But if you're doing it in fits and starts, it's you can make the band self-sufficient from that, but you still got to have something to fall back on and enjoy your life and be able to go to a hole in the wall and get some money out in between the gigs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have one last question in relation to this, which I thought I'd ask because it's like whenever you start a new job and you start a new band, etc. That first 6-month period, you've got that adrenaline rush. You've got, this is exciting. We're writing new material. You're planning for the future. But then after about 6 months, things can start to happen. 6 months to a year, and you don't mind putting things on hold, or you don't mind trying to make adjustments in your life for this new band. But after a while, that starts to grate on you, or that can start to grate on you. So how do you get 6 months, a year down the line? Do you keep that motivation to keep yourself to keep that band going? Because when you're spinning plates, at some point your fatigue kicks in, and you go, "I want a break from this. Is it worth still doing this band?"
Are you talking about once the honeymoon period's over?
Yeah, the honeymoon's over. You have to then make a decision: is this band worth staying in?
It's if you've got a plan, if you've got it's like the band version of a business plan, isn't it? What's the plan moving forward? If you're just doing it ad hoc day to day, then that could happen. If you've actually got a plan, you've got a cycle, you've got an album, you're going to studio on this date, you're writing for this album, you're gigging these dates. And as long as you've got that really good kind of team mentality in the band where you respect each other, you work together, then I think that's the perfect recipe for success, really, within whatever parameters you set yourself as that success, whether it be massive or small. As long as it's, you're working with those parameters.
Can I add on that? When
No, you can't. Go on.
When I joined Best Medicine, Will came round. He basically told me about this 3-year plan that they had. Of this is going to go on, then we're going to do this, and it's going to have this kind of theme. And I was amazed. I've never been in a band like that before, where they've actually got the next 3 years structured, where everything's going to fall in place. I mean, whether it happens or not is obviously in the hands of fate. But I really like the fact that, okay, so I know in a year's time, we plan to have these singles out. We plan to have this lined up. And that gave me a bit of a safety blanket to go, right, I know which direction we're going in. And I thought that was really valuable. I think I would urge other bands to do a similar thing.
Yeah.
See where you're going to be in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, 3-year, 5-year plan.
And work towards it. Give yourself some... what's the word? Structure.
Yeah.
Structure and focus as well, So you can, you're 100%. Working towards one common goal and you know what you're doing. So.
Yeah.
Very
That's
good.
what-
Right, I think we can move on to a new topic. That's been about 45 minutes on that topic. Hey!
Well done, Nick.
Alternative metal. Alternative metal. What do we hate it? What do we
No, I
think
think we
about
did
Yeah, let's go back to
on that one.
alternative metal. I want to talk some more about that.
Okay, so the next topic for discussion, unintelligible band name logos. So pretty much all your extreme death metal logos. Yeah, like that shit on your shirt. Yeah, shit on a shirt.
What band do you think that is?
That's
To be honest, it looks like spilled paint. I haven't got a clue.
that looks like it says studios, right?
Yes, correct. It's not a band shirt. It was a trick question. Yeah, it's Monolith Studios, great studios in
yeah.
London. Anyway,
Okay.
it's not a band, but you read it, so it's not unintelligible. So
That's actually at least partially intelligible. There are some, and I don't understand the band's point of getting more and more extreme to the point where you can't read anything at all. So what's
it's hilarious.
it's pointless.
It's funny.
It is
I-
funny.
I like it when they have on a poster they have all the logos, but then in
Yeah.
like normal font they have the band name.
Just
Yeah,
brackets. Yeah.
It's just like loads of like pigeons of like shit on it. It's just-
yeah.
That's
Okay, so
everywhere.
can someone please just take me through this about where did this start from? If anyone knows, where did these sort of logos come from? Why
Yeah.
have they got so extreme? And why, apart from being humorous, why are bands going down this route now? I just don't get it. I don't understand it.
If you're writing extreme music, and I suppose it's a bit like, why do they have to scream? You know, why can't they sing?
That's a whole
Yeah.
other question.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't necessarily work otherwise. Because the vocals is another instrument that's kind of be working with the guitars and the drums. It makes it sound horrible. So why not make the logo horrible?
Mm.
Yeah, instead of it sitting there in
It's
time.
been more and more extreme than your peers, isn't it? You know,
Correct.
it's been, you know, it's taken it to the next level. Same with vocal style, same as lyrical content, same as song titles. I mean, we are talking about like the slam death genre here, aren't we?
Yeah, gore grind and all that.
Much, you know, but some of them are, you know, bordering on ridiculous. You know, but you know, somebody's got this logo that's you can just about make out. You have to work it out, and then somebody, you know, the next band that comes along who are influenced by them or want to sound like them, mate, there's even more. It's just one-upmanship. I think Nick used the phrase "pushing the envelope." That's what they're doing. Isn't it? They're just taking it one step higher than you know, their mates band who've just come out before. You know,
At the end of
Yeah.
the day, it's without sounding like a ponce, it's art, right? Ponce, don't call me that. It's art, so you can do what the hell you want. And if you want to write an album that sounds like someone hoovering, throwing a drum kit down the stairs, then fair play. And if you want to have a logo that looks like a dead tree's been run over and put up against the fence, then yeah. I mean, there's a meme, isn't there? There's that meme of like a bunch of twigs.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I honestly thought that was a band logo.
Yeah.
And that was a meme.
And Party Cannon did their thing, didn't they? Where they were just like, "Fuck it, we're gonna be called Party Cannon," and
Yeah. I
not
think
have a
that's
logo.
great, though. Like, I love
Yeah.
that because when you see it on like a lineup, it's just
Yeah,
right
fantastic.
there. It's
but no, I think no other band can do that now, though, like because they've already done it.
yeah, it's already been done.
Yeah.
So Party Cannon, Chris from Party Cannon's got this thing about care emoji every single post. I mean, it's been going on for 2 years solid. Hasn't stopped. If you've got any advice on how to deal with that, please let me know.
Care emoji back. That's the only.
No,
Kill them with kindness.
Yeah.
It just encourages them. It gets it just. Yeah.
Good. That's the right answer.
But yeah, I think my issue around having the logo things is I understand about the extremities and stuff like that, but with a logo of a band, like we've got the Silosis t-shirt on there with
Yeah.
Mike, and so you look at it and go, Silosis band, I know the name, or you could look at it and you could see it and you could ask about the band. When you've got this massive nonsense on your chest, how are you
I think
promoting
this
the
is probably
band?
like the limit for me of like, okay, that's eligible, but it looks kind of like of that ilk, I guess. So
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I'm probably talking too much, but I've got another opinion. People that like that type of music, they kind of memorize the pattern of it, and they know which band logo that is. It's not the words, it's the art, it's the image that it portrays.
do you think
why
there's any
simple,
super
isn't it?
fans you can actually draw it from memory, like those kind of
Probably,
logos?
yeah. But I think they'll know. Oh, yeah, I love that band. And, when they're hanging around in Morrison's or whatever in the freezer aisle, and they bump into each other, and then they go, "Oh yeah, I like that. That band looks like a squiggle."
Yeah, or it's like, oh, you probably haven't heard of this band, man. Like, you know, way too cool for you. Like,
One-upmanship again, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
One-upmanship. Andy said it's maybe the one-upmanship element.
yeah. The more it's like that whole thing of, you know, elitism, right, and listening to the most obscure music that, you know, some people are really into or whatever.
That's it. I mean, talking about obscure music and elitism, we have G here who likes to listen to the most horrible music and likes bands with squiggly logos and also likes horrible horror stuff, don't you?
I do like horrendously bad films.
Fantastic.
Well, I have got a point on this. So I don't know how many of you have read Lords of Chaos. I know it's a controversial book in the black metal scene, but there's a paragraph in there that I really liked, and it said about extreme metal is the only form of music that has kind of forced itself underground so that it can talk about it. It can be as extreme as it wants. It's not out to make loads of money. It just wants to kind of be free from any kind of
expressive.
Well, it's so expressive, and I think this is an extra branch of that, where it's like, if you can't understand our logo and you're not listening to our music, then fuck it, you go and do something else. And I really like that about metal, the fact that we're almost like, if we know we're not trying, most of the music we all listen to, we're not trying to make the world sing along to it. So why should we be pandering to labels, to this and the other? I mean, I was very impressed when I first listened to Anal Mathrak, and I would realise there's no lyric sheet. So the only bit of the album I could tell was "Die on Your Knees." I was like, oh, okay, I got that bit. Yeah, brilliant. The rest, fantastic. And I just find that the logo thing is just another element of that. Like, you can't read this, doesn't bother us.
Yeah,
we're fine.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the black metal solo act? What was his Exastra? He's an American fella. Now, his logo, you could not read it, but every time I see it, I can actually tell what it is.
That's what I was saying. It's like a picture that you recognise, you know.
I was playing in the covers band, and the other guitarist, Steve Wallace, you might know him. He had an Exastro t-shirt, and I was like, fuck, I didn't know anyone else actually had heard of this band. But we had a little brotherhood there.
Now you're both super underground weirdos.
Yeah, we bumped.
Yeah, well,
yeah. There is a point then.
Yeah, I think I like keeping it readable with the bands that I feel like I want people to, you know, check out if you're going to do like a merch run or something. And you're trying to get people to listen to your music. I'm not sure if there may not be a whole lot of point in having an unreadable logo, but you know, if some people want that, then that's cool as well, I suppose.
Doesn't it just establish itself and become part of the landscape though? Because I'll give you an example. Why do rockers and metal people, why do a lot of them have long hair? So a lot of this comes out of the late 60s. If you, in America especially, you would grow your hair because you didn't want to be drafted into the Vietnam War. That was an anti-establishment protest. It was an aesthetic that you would do. And then all those great bands, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, that became the image, didn't it, of heavy music. And now, you know, we have death metal bands, and a lot of these people are very, very masculine and have beards, but they have long hair. And normally they're not the type of people you'd expect to have long hair. You know, they probably, rightly so, should enjoy football, and then in America they probably enjoy American football and basketball, etc. So that, if you were to ask those people, why do you have long hair? It is part of the landscape, isn't it? And same with the logos. I mean, Andy, you mentioned it. Surely this comes out of gore grind and death metal, doesn't it? And then you do have black metal bands that also have logos that are unintelligible. But I think it's just the thing that you do now. And yeah, as you said, Nick, G, you said there, I like how in Lords of Chaos that paragraph says it's a movement, a counterculture movement that forced itself underground, didn't it? How many genres have wanted to do that? Even punk wanted to take over, didn't it? He wanted to bring down the establishment. And you're right. Black metal, to use an example, wanted to create this cocoon, and it would be, I don't want to use the word self-righteous because that's an insult, but it would create its own world, and everybody in there would understand it. If you don't like it, fuck off. So yeah, there is an element of atavism, isn't there, with the logos, where it's like, we don't give a shit if you can't read this. Although for people who are going like Richard to a death metal festival this week or last week, you probably do need to see the name in brackets as well. Otherwise, you have to Google 28 and try and work out who's on
Yeah,
the.
because I wanted to check out some of the bands beforehand, so it was quite nice that they were like actually rated.
But on the flip side, if you went to that festival, we saw the lineup, you didn't have logos like that, you might go, is this like a real like death metal festival, or is it like, I need to see those kind of logos? Like,
yeah, I might not have been as excited for it as I was, because I didn't know what I was getting into,
Yeah, is this legit or?
Yeah.
Well, Kirk brought up a good thing about the black metal scene, and Euronymous, whether you want to call it a marketing ploy or whether he was being genuine, he wanted to create a form of music that was so unlistenable that generic people would just not be able to stand it. Therefore, he kind of tells you, if you're not good enough for this, or if you're not strong enough to listen to this, you can go away. And that instantly made people go, I'm strong enough for this. That's kind of what attracted me to black metal, like, because I wanted to hear the most coarse, horrible stuff I could do. So it's, as I say, it's another branch of that, where this logo is so horrendous, I can only imagine that their music is going to kind of follow suit. So I need to listen to it. I don't know what to Google, but
yeah, how would you Google those names?
You've got AI now to do it for you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to another topic then.
Oh, way!
Yay, move on. And Andy, I'm going to get you to come in on this topic first, and then get everyone else in. So, got to find it there. Band T-shirts. So your latest band, your Metallica T-shirts, etc., etc. I wear them, but I tend to wear them if I'm going to a metal club or if I'm going to a gig or something like that to show support for that particular band. But why I don't ever wear heavy metal T-shirts with a band's logo on to go down to the park or go out to do other things. It's for whenever I'm going in those scenarios. So why do people wear T-shirts in everyday life, like you're going to the supermarket? And I'm not criticizing people for doing it. I just want to understand if there's a thought process behind it, or if it's just that you only ever own heavy metal T-shirts.
Can I jump in?
It's a bit of both, I think. But
You hit the nail on the head. I don't own any other clothes.
literally.
I pretty much you've literally just got that plaid shirt and that's it, and some heavy metal T-shirts.
I think I've got black heavy metal shirts or plain black T-shirts.
Yeah, I'm like, have I got a metal shirt on here? I'm not sure.
Is that I got dressed up? I'll put on my plain black
the other
shirt.
ones who are not wearing a band T-shirt.
Yeah. I want to throw it back to Andy, because I know Andy does wear his lots of T-shirts and stuff like that. So I'm curious from Andy's point of view, is this what's the reason for putting those T-shirts on when you're going out for day-to-day life?
It's just my identity. It hasn't always been, but for many, many years, the black jeans, band T-shirt, that's me. I think I've got one non-band T-shirt, but that's from Chris from Own Your Life sort of clothing brand. That's the only sort of non-metal band T-shirt I own and wear. I have got suits, I've got smart shirts, but they're worn on the occasions that require them. I don't need to look smart for my job. I've got a job work uniform. It's just me. And it saves a hell of a lot of money trying to keep up with the trendy latest styles, which it's not my thing anyway. Never has been, really, to be honest. But when I was sort of in relationships in particular, where you've got to be a certain type of person, I am myself now. It's hard to keep up with. What style of casual shirts are that all the lads wearing now? I've never been a lad. It's just me. It's just what I feel comfortable in. I wouldn't feel comfortable in anything else. It's just my identity, and I love it.
100% agree.
Yeah, and you are a lad, Andy, but you're in your own way.
Did that start though when you were like younger and stuff like that? So when you were younger,
when
you first started going to gigs, you buy your T-shirts, because that I know when I started going to gigs, the first gig I went to was Cannibal Corpse, and so that was the merch booth. Buy a T-shirt, and it was like, yeah, support, and then I'd wear it to school because I was still at school at the time when we went to Cannibal Corpse. Sneaked in, yay! But yeah, that may have even been one of them, to be honest.
But
yeah, I was 15, I think, when I went to that gig. But yeah, that at the time was something that you would show your mates and you'd show what bands you were into, and it was all about that kind of showcasing all the different styles and stuff of the music. And you were always sharing music and putting your CD player on, sharing it with the other guy, your mini disc player if you were so fortunate to suddenly jump on the mini disc revolution.
Tapes.
It's a great.
I was on the mini disc revolution.
Yeah, I never.
And then
did
it
that.
went.
Yeah,
It's a great.
I've got loads to
conversation
buy if
starter as
anyone
well.
wants to.
Definitely.
So, what about yourself, like Mike? Is that a very similar sort of thing for what you'd think as well about the?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with what Andy was saying. Like, it's definitely, a comfort thing, and just always worn band shirts. I remember, like, when I was a kid, you just go to Camden, you buy loads for like $5 each or whatever, and you just have loads of band shirts and whatnot. But with what you were saying, Dave, about buying it from shows, that's a good conversation starter. If you're wearing a tour shirt and someone else is at that show or whatever, like, you could just meet someone anywhere, and you could be, 20 minutes later, you're having this really long conversation about music and all sorts of other things because you're both into the same thing and you're both at the same gig. So I think that's one of the cool things about it, to be fair, like, which is why I think from memory, so long as I've enjoyed the show, I've always picked up a shirt from either a support or this was from the Lamb of God show at Wembley.
Oh, nice.
Months ago. The Solos has opened up, and I've been meaning to see them for years. I love them so much, and they were just fantastic. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's definitely like a conversation starter, even just like the regular band shirts. If there's like two, obviously there's a meme with like the two guys in like a Slayer shirt or whatever, but
Okay. What about yourself, Richard? Because you don't always wear like metal t-shirts. A lot of the time you do, but I've not always seen you in a metal t-shirt. So what's your process on it?
I think I cared a lot more when I was younger, to be honest. Like when I was a teenager, I was like, all I want to wear is like band shirts, just constantly. That's all I care about. But I don't know. I think now I do definitely still wear band shirts and stuff. I have them all over the place. I don't really wear them to work generally because I mean, like I could do, but I don't really like having to explain to like non-music people like, oh, what does that mean, what's that weird logo, like what's that, why is that artwork gross or whatever, I just can't be asked to have that conversation. So if I just wear plain shit, then I don't have to think about it, which is nice. But
conversations like that.
Really, I get absolutely sick of it, man. Especially at work or something, I don't want. And then they'll be like, "Oh, like you in a band?" And you're like, "No, I'm not."
I'm in any band.
I'm not in any bands. No, they're like, "Well, sing us a song." Like, no.
Which band do you want me to sing it from?
Okay.
So, but no, in terms of like supporting the bands, because the other thing is that buying a t-shirt is one of the best ways to just get money to the bands that you like, really. If you're not many people buy CDs, but you can just buy a t-shirt, and especially if it's a cool shirt that you like and they've got cool artwork. I just like stuff that looks cool, so getting a band that has a cool logo or a cool album art and having it on t-shirt is like pretty sick. Yeah.
Cool. Kirk, you're quite intermittent in your kind of t-shirt wearing. So how do you feel about these sort of things?
Yeah, probably a bit like Richard. When I was younger, teenager, sixth form, college, up to my early 20s, I always used to wear a band t-shirt. And then I went through a phase where I stopped listening to new music. And then it's when I came to my late 20s and early 30s again, and me and my friends, we'd all become lads by then, polo shirt, short hair. And we discovered we were still listening to extreme metal. I'm proud of it. And then we started thinking, do you know what? Let's just continue wearing fucking Adidas and fucking jeans with holes in them and combing our hair. And people will be surprised when they say, what do you listen to? It's quite funny when they say, what do you listen to? They look at you and they just assume you like garage or some shit like that. And then you're like, oh yeah, the latest Gajira album was excellent. Have you heard of this band called Meshuggah? And then you go through and be like, fucking hell, I didn't know you were into that kind of music. So I kind of enjoyed that for a while. And then COVID came along and I spent really the last 3 years every day wearing shorts and a metal band t-shirt because I was working from home. So just to answer the question, I wouldn't go on a Preston North End football match with my brother-in-law and wear a Celtic Frost t-shirt, not because I'm ashamed. I just wouldn't do that. I would wear a polo shirt. At the same time, like Richard, I wouldn't really go into the office and display, you know, like a Nervosa t-shirt or Sepultura or anything like that. Again, not because I'm ashamed. I don't think I just want to wear I just want to wear something that makes me innocuous in the office. But yeah, if I'm out, if I'm going to the pub, I might stick a Megadeth t-shirt on or something like that. I'm proud of it. And one last point as well, even though I keep saying that, because people don't buy CDs, if you want to help the artist, buy the merchandise. Look at that band, Die Artist Murder. They had a world tour booked. COVID came along and they unfortunately spunked, 19,000 Australian dollars on the merch, and it had all these tour dates that were not going to happen. So that just shows you now the industry. If you're a band, especially playing metal, you are going to rely on merch. So help the band. If you want to help the band that you love, like me wearing a Periphery t-shirt or Mike wearing a Silosis t-shirt, go and buy the merch. Should be proud of it. Like supporting the football team.
For sure.
Good point.
Absolutely.
Okay, there we go. We'll finish on that. Finish on that final point there from Kirk on that one.
Could he say something? Sorry.
No. You
I also have one point at this, but I'll let
No, just
go on then. I'll let you two talk again.
about I know I've talked a lot. I do apologise, but it's a good one. I had the coronation which happened recently. It was on the telly and it was on in the background, and I happened to look at it. And out of this sea of quote unquote normal dressed people, there was a bloke standing there in a Meshuggah t-shirt, which the BBC cameras were on, looking underneath the camera, and he walks up to it and just goes like that. T-shirt in a sea of these King enthusiasts was one of the funniest things I've seen. That's not the finest bit of pride of wearing that guy got up in the morning and went, "I'm wearing my Meshuggah t-shirt today."
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Fair play.
There are definitely special occasions where it's right to wear a sick metal band shirt. You know,
Absolutely genius. It made my day. That did.
So could I just say, when I was in the late teens, early 20s, I had this rather abrasive T-shirt, which was the famous Slay Autumn Weihnacht, with the zombie Slayer thing. And I would go to festivals and you'd get people yelling Slayer at you. And then I went to Amsterdam and there'd just be random people in the street just going, Slayer! And you just feel like, these are my guys. Right. I've instantly found a drinking friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, like you start up a conversation with them and you realise you're kindred
Well,
shins.
it's camaraderie. Kindred shins.
Yeah.
It's camaraderie, and as Andy said, it's identity. And I think, and as you said, Kirk, buy the band's t-shirt. You're walking advert. You're walking billboard.
Absolutely.
And you can be proud of it. It's on your person. It's the ultimate bit of band purchasing you can do, which supports the band and makes you feel cool and nice.
I don't think I could get away with wearing a what was the Cannibal Corpse shirt that you've got, G? It's not Tomb of the Mutilated, is it? Isn't it?
Oh, it's probably really understated, like most of their t-shirts.
Yeah, but like the obviously, yeah, like that or like the Tomb of the Mutilated album art. I don't think I could get away with wearing that anywhere.
Well, that's
like,
a coronation, then.
I don't wear it.
Did anyone have the Cradle of Filth t-shirt, the notorious one?
oh, with G,
I never
no.
bought that.
No.
No.
If I did, I don't think I'd wear it outside of like Bloodstock
yeah.
or something. There are shirts that I will exclusively only wear at festivals.
I can't remember if it was the actual band or someone wearing that shirt to the Vatican, but I remember that being a thing, and it was a real issue, obviously.
Oh yeah. I mean, it pops up at Bloodstock every year.
Yeah.
I think it's the guy who actually dressed as Jesus that's wearing it as well.
Yeah. I've got a Rotting Christ patch on my my patch jacket, and I kind of forget that's there sometimes.
Brilliant.
Okay, we can move on. We've got two final big questions or topics to discuss, and then we're going to get your answers back on your favourite singers and your favourite Hertfordshire metal bands. So now I don't think this has actually ever happened, but I'm going to question mark is in theory, if this happens, what's your thoughts? So if a band release a breakout album, so we can use, I don't know, Metallica's Black Album would be the key one. So everyone knows that was the one that kind of skyrocketed as far as like their popularity. And then over a period of multiple years later, members of that band, of that lineup or the original lineup then leave and are replaced by different members. So 15 years later, it's a completely different lineup of a band. None of those were involved in the writing of that album, or recording of that album, should they really be allowed to be called that band?
Hmm.
It depends really. Like there's always, the kind of centerpieces of a band, I guess, and if you have Metallica without James Hetfield, then I would not call it Metallica.
Well, yeah, look what's happening at the moment with the Pantera.
Yeah, exactly. It is that, like, I struggle to be like
controversial, I know, but it's happening. But yeah,
it is. Yeah. But
I guess one of the ones you could talk about maybe would be Sepultura.
Yeah, obviously
there's no original members from that particular band now.
The bass player was in from the beginning, wasn't he? Paolo.
No, second, he wasn't on that first one. He wasn't on the very, very first recording.
So
the three famous examples are Napalm Death.
Yes,
they're the most famous example, aren't they?
Yeah,
Believe it or not, the band Ginger don't have any original members. That you'll know these, Nick. You know that mathcore band Norma Jean. They don't have original members left either.
I was going to say, Sepultura we did that tour with Sepultura as the current lineup with Derek and etc. And I mean, Eloy Casagrande is such an incredible player, and he played with a broken leg through the whole tour, which was wow. Even though he said, "My doctor told me not to do this," but he did it anyway, and he wouldn't have noticed. But yeah, Sepultura is a great example. Napalm Death's a good example, as you said. But I understand what you're saying. It's not the same lineup. At the end of the day, they are playing as the brand, I suppose you could say it. It's the brand behind the band. That this band equals this logo, this image, this machine behind it. It's a bit like a company changing employee. It's still the same name. And I know what you mean. Whether that's right or wrong, that's what's happening. Yeah.
So I think the key statement would be, like, for in Sepultura's case, is their key breakout albums like Chaos AD, Arise, stuff like that. We still had Andreas Kisser was involved in it, and so you still have some members of the band are still there were involved in that writing.
Yeah.
So I think even like you could talk about bands like In Flames. None of the original members of In Flames are in Flames, but their main albums were written with some of the members that are in there now still involved.
Yeah.
But the original early albums, which were not their breakout albums, they weren't their biggest, most popular albums. Fair enough, they weren't involved in it. But
what do you think about singers from bands doing their solo tours and then playing the music from the band they're in, which has zero? There's no band members on that apart from one member who's allowed to play those songs.
So a good example would be like Sebastian Bach doing basically Skid Row numbers.
Well, also Fear Factory, because Bell Burton is going off on a solo tour to do Fear Factory songs. I read in the industry press the other day. That's a thing. It happens a lot. Like, what's your opinion on that?
I'm not a big fan of that personally. I want to see them go out and do their stuff. So I'm a Godsmack fan. But when Sully goes out, when Sully Erna goes out on his tour, he doesn't do Godsmack songs. He does his album. He's got 2 independent albums. He's got 2 solo albums, and he plays his solo stuff. He doesn't do Godsmack stuff.
He's still involved in Godsmack, though, is he?
But he still does Godsmack. But he could easily go out and put a couple of Godsmack numbers in there because that's what he's more known for. But he goes out and does purely his originals. Whereas Sebastian Bach probably goes out and does Skid Row because that's what he's most known for.
Yeah.
And people expect it. So that's why he does it. But I probably wouldn't want to see that as much.
What about Venom and Venom Inc?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, because Tony wrote Black Metal, didn't he? The song or the album, I forget. But they do that song as Venom Inc. And it's a whole clusterfuck of situations there. But they're also writing original music, so it's
I think
following up from Nick's point, Liv Christine, who me and Kirk interviewed, had a great pleasure doing that tail end of last year. She's got a great solo career, but she also performs live some Theatre of Tragedy songs. Now, I've not seen her perform live, but I would like to see a mixture of both because Theatre of Tragedy is what she is known for. She is also known for her solo career, so I personally haven't got a problem with that. Paul Di'Anno used to tour his Iron Maiden era songs as well, which fans would have lapped up. I would have liked to have seen that, but he also has solo material and other bands he's been involved with as well. So again, it's one of them topics we're probably all divided and have split opinions upon.
Well, I think, yeah, you're spot on, Andy. What I was going to say is, at the end of the day, these bands. Let's pick. I don't know, Napalm Death, for example. Everyone knows who follows that band knows who is not in the band and who is the band. Yeah, if you're following the band, and you're buying tickets to see them, so you already know going in it's not going to be what it was. It may be even better. They're allowed to do it, so why not?
Yeah.
I think what was unique with Napalm Death.
Why not? Why not? As long as it isn't absolutely rubbish, then fair play.
But Napalm Death, let's use Andy as an example. He buys Scum from Woolworths in 1987. Andy, you were probably not aware at the time that there were no original members left on the debut album because it happened so quickly. Side A and side B of that album are a different band, aren't they? But you don't know that at the time. So I think it's unique that on the debut album, they'd already lost almost all the original members. Oh no, I think Bill Steers was still in it. But you look at the two iconic people in Napalm Death, Shane Embry, and then obviously Barney Greenway. They're not original members, are they? But they are Napalm Death. But before we put the question back, I've just thought of an example where a band decided not to continue because it turns out there was not going to be any original members. Do you remember that band I Wrestle the Bear Ones?
Yeah.
So Courtney, who's in Spirit Box, ended up being their singer, didn't she? The reason she left that and formed Spirit Box with her husband, who was also in I Wrestle the Bears, the one original member who was left decided he didn't want to do the tour because of work commitments. So this band that he'd created with 4 other people that were no longer in the band went out touring with his blessing because he'd lost interest. And they're on the road. They're just thinking, why the fuck are we playing other people's songs? That's Courtney and her husband, and they went and formed Spirit Box. So Dave, your original question is, should you continue? That's a band that had an epiphany. The ones who'd gone out on this absurd tour where the one remaining member couldn't be bothered to do it. They just thought, this is bullshit. Why are we doing it? This isn't even, it's not even our art. So that's an example where they just thought, this is absurd.
It works both ways, basically.
Yeah.
The band could have, as you say, the epiphany and go, actually, this isn't for us. Why are we doing this? Or bands aren't happy with what they're seeing, what they're experiencing from them buying into the band, the brand, as I called it, because at the end of the day, it's a business. They're buying into this name, this sound, and those members. Some people might not care who plays in that band. They just want to have those songs delivered to them. But other people like us are really into who's playing on that band, who's playing on that album. We get really into it. So it's horses for courses. Everyone's different.
Can I give my 2 cents?
I don't think no.
Can I please?
Go on then.
So, I mean, I might come across as a bit of a hypocrite here, but I see Napalm Death as what I call a legacy band. It's a bit like Hawkwind, where when they first started their first 3 albums, there was lots of shuffles and changes, but the product was still Napalm Death. And as we know, Napalm Death has gone from strength to strength. I find Napalm Death one of my favourite bands.
Blinding Live, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When you guys supported them in Milton Keynes, one of my favourite gigs ever.
Good fun.
I always give Napalm Death a pass because they are a legacy. And to be honest, if they went on for like 60 years with different members, I wouldn't care as long as they were producing good music. Sepultura, on the other hand, I always thought Sepultura was the Cavalieras. And then when they left after Roots, for me, it wasn't the same. They still had they marketed themselves as the same band, but I did not love it as much.
I agree with that, G. Yeah.
But then, do you think that if you got into Sepultura after the period where they left, and then you were, that would be your version of Sepultura, and if you didn't know what
I suppose this is where grey area lies. What is the point of? I will say that Sepultura, since Roots, I have not had much interest in. I've given it a listen, and it's just not. I mean, don't forget, I got into Sepultura when I was like 14, and for me, that was the idyllic. I just did a little burp.
You did do a little bit.
That's the idyllic Sepultura.
No one would have noticed that you brought it up.
So therefore, I can't give Sepultura a pass on the legacy, but I can give Napalm Death because since the very early days, they were chopping and changing.
And I know people who are into Sepultura who are about maybe 10, 12 years younger than me, who know Sepultura as what they are now. But when I've mentioned like Arise and Beneath the Remains, two of my favourite albums, which I banned from my car because I can't drive to them. So I go through is they like, oh, what's that? I don't know those albums. It's like, what? They know a certain timeline of Sepultura with Derek moving up till now. That's what they listen to. They haven't really delved back. It's interesting. It's an interesting divide.
The Cavalieras, though, shaped Sepultura into what they became, and then
100%,
yeah. Whereas Napalm Death was shaped by people that now are no longer in the band from, as you say, the very first album.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's a legacy now. This is like Napalm Death could pass the
Napalm
torch to anyone, and as long as they're still keeping true to the Napalm, like left wing, hardcore, grindcore,
Nazi punk fuck off.
Nazi punk fuck off. That's fine with me.
I think the other thing, another good example of like the brand or a legacy one would be Gwar, because they've got no original members, but it's all about the look of the band. So when you go see Gwar, you go there for the experience of Gwar.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily about the individual guys, the musicians, and
once again, that's a legacy. They're leaving their legacy because they obviously didn't want to be seen for their facial features. They want to be known for their camaraderie and their theatricality.
Yeah,
and therefore they are still Gwar in my eyes.
A genius thing to do is to have masked band members where you can change who you want at any point and no one knows. Sleep Token, like Slipknot, like
Mushroom Head is a very good example. Mushroom Head seems to change members every single tour. So
you're not looking at the person; you're looking at the ego created by the masks and the costumes.
Yeah.
So you can be change what you want, which feeds into you're buying into the music and the brand rather than the individual.
At what point do you think a band should change their name or be like, change their sound so much? So if a band gets a whole bunch of new members in, and their next album is completely different to, I'm thinking of that Suicide Silence album that was basically an alternative metal record. The throwback there. They completely veered off the deathcore thing and did this alternative metal record, and nobody liked it. And they had this new singer, and it was a massive disaster. At what point do you go new members? They should probably put this out under a new project name or something.
That's their decision, isn't it?
I'm not familiar with Suicide Silence, but is that not them just marketing off someone else's work?
What's the brand? It's the branding again. It's
it
could be. Yeah.
Marketing. It's because as soon as you lose that band name and logo, you've got to start afresh.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is a lot of hard work if you've got an awful lot of followers that follow that particular band name.
But if you change genres, you're going to piss off fans, I think.
But people are going to be having that conversation, so people are still going to be like drawn to your band on some level, even if the people who were into it originally are like, "Oh, I don't like what they're doing now." Like people are hearing you talk about that and go, "Oh, maybe I'll check it out then." If it's bad or good or whatever. So
there is a car crash example of that. Dave, guess which band I'm going to mention? Celtic Frost, the most hated metal album of all time. Nick, you know this. The most hated metal album of all time, and unanimously people say the worst metal album of all time, is their 1988 record, Cold Lake, which followed up the 1987 album Into the Pandemonium, which is incredible, and it turned into a hair metal band, and everyone, including Tom G. Warrior, thinks it's a shit album. That is the most notorious example. So even though people were having conversations, mate, it was just like, this is shit. This band have betrayed music. That was it.
Betrayed music.
Music, yeah.
Good Lord.
So even though people were talking about like, I fucking hate this band now.
Think about
that's not great for the brand, is it?
Bands like Machine Head, or other bands around, the 90s, noughties, went through that awkward new metal phase.
Yeah.
And think about it. If they did that but changed the band name and they went back to Machine Head, no one would really.
Yeah.
That name, it was like what?
But there are bands that refuse to go back to, like Opeth. I'm not sure if you could justify Opeth changing their name, but they're not a metal band really so much anymore.
But for me,
that's another example of that, Richard, isn't it?
Yeah.
As an Opeth fan, I like the journey that they've gone on.
Absolutely, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the fact that Mick Lackerfeld woke up one day and went, "No bollocks, we're just going to write."
Yeah.
I can't be bothered with it. Let's do some.
Yeah.
mean, I don't think if you change your style, it's a difficult one to go and change your name, because I mean, Paradise Lost went through a huge change in
That's
style.
the best example.
But they came right back round it. So I think you just have to ride the wave with the styles changes. There are a few examples of bands more recently, like Eskimo Callboy changing to Electric Callboy. For whatever, I kind of don't know what the reason was, but there are bands that have done it where they've actually been quite popular at the time when they've made the changes. So it's not a case of changing it because they're out of favor or anything like that. But yeah, interesting debate. We have one last question, and it's actually interesting that you brought up about the Cavalera Boys, because it's actually the Cavalera Boys that have actually triggered this question. Album re-releases, remasters, or re-recordings, are these a good thing? So obviously the Cavalera have gone back to the early was it Morbid Visions, and re-recording it. The question is this a good thing? Is this do we like bands go out? Because we see a lot of also re-recording, like Megadeth went back and they remixed and remastered all of Euthanasia and other albums, and
I think they did their whole back catalogue. Megadeth.
They did.
I think.
And do we like this? Do we think it's a bad idea? What's your thoughts? Nick's got a thought by the looks of it.
Yeah, sorry. The reason I jump in is because I'm worried I'm going to forget. Basically, the fact we're talking about it now means it is a good idea, because obviously it rekindles that kind of passion for that album. Can you put that away? It rekindles that passion for those records.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and it's all, once again, it's that kind of.
People who might not have heard him will then get to hear him as well. So
it's clever marketing of going, look, we've done this, let's do it again. Check it out. It's a bit like, remaking a film, which might end up being crap, but at least people start talking about it and go back to the original. So
it's rare that you hear a remaster and go, wow, that sounds like world-beatingly different now. Like
there you go.
It's always quite subtle, but
it might be a fail, right? But it's still, the fact is, people are still talking about it, and you're bringing traffic to, whether it be internet traffic or physical traffic to buying some merch at a gig or whatever it may be, you're still in front of your mind, and it's rekindling something that was great at the time, bringing it back, remastering it, putting it back out there,
reliving it.
Doesn't matter on whatever you guys' opinions are. At the end of the day, it's an idea that tends to go down well and bring back that kind of passion for that record. But
I'm definitely not against them.
Nice, fair play.
I'm not. The fact they exist, I'm not against. I've never actually heard a remastered one, which I've actually preferred more than the original, because I've heard the original in its first case. What I always find is it's always overproduced. They take all the rawness, they take out all the energy of it, and then they, like on some of the Megadeth ones, you started hearing like bits of key arrangements and stuff in it, and you're like, what have you done? You've taken a great track and you've ruined it.
I quite liked Killing Is My Business. I quite liked that remaster. But the other albums I wasn't really like, because they all sounded pretty great as they were anyway.
Yeah.
Especially albums like Rust in Peace and stuff like that. You don't really want to touch that.
What's your opinion on taking a perfectly well-produced album and then really...
I was just going to say, there are some albums that just don't need to be remastered, really.
Opeth Deliverance, someone did that.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it was Steve Wilson, actually. I'm not sure. They remastered Deliverance, which already sounded great at the time. And then what you just said, Dave, they kind of brought out some bizarre elements on the record, which weren't there originally, but also didn't add anything to it. It's just like, there's reverb on the snare.
I think the Judas Priest album Painkiller, the remaster of that is notoriously awful, as one of the worst remasters ever made.
The original album was a piece in time. It was that from that era, and just brutal guitars, just right in your face guitars, bass drums and snare drums, and just vocals that just went through your eyeballs into the back.
But if the recording and master was originally not amazing, and then somebody they come out with a really good remaster, then I can see that that's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Nevermore, Enemies of Reality. When they released the album, I remember when it came out, great record musically. The production was absolutely terrible. I don't know whether it was the production or the mastering, because they had to change studios halfway through. I think it had a flooding in the studio or something. Something happened. The record label, I think, was Century Media. They pressured them to put it out, and it sounded like mud. It was just the worst sounding record of the time. But I knew, listening to it, this is probably the best Nevermore album they put out. And then thankfully, I think Andy Sneap got hold of it and remastered it, and it sounded mint. and now I can listen to it. So that's a prime example of taking something that was, down the toilet and turning it into listenable music. Apart from that, apart from a marketing ploy and getting people to talk about like we are now, what is the point? Is the question.
So on that, I was bought this for my birthday. It's the revisited version of Revolver, and it's been called like the best thing that's happened to the Beatles. I don't know if you guys are Beatles fans or not, but this is probably the best album.
That's not black metal.
Metal, disappointing.
Although it influenced Charles Manson, so it did have quite a malevolent influence.
The Beatles needed more blast beats, let's be honest.
Yeah, they did.
If you're a Beatles fan, this is the album you have to have a listen to, because it's taken that 60s mono and putting it into what we now conceive as a really well-produced album. But as you've all said, it's really a case of whether it's worth bringing up to date, whether it's, and I'll come back to this Sepultura. I have heard the Morbid Visions and I fucking love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always liked the early version, but it's not something I can go jogging to.
Does it bring it to life?
No, absolutely. It really brings everything up. And, just listening to it makes it sound like it's still got that very gruff kind of, there's the echoey lyrics, there's the proto black metal in it. And I just fucking love it. And I have no problem with that as long as it's done well. But as you said, like if they're going to redo an album and it sounds like shit, then there's no fucking point.
Yeah, if you take an album that sounds like shit, make it good. Happy days.
Yeah.
Dave, my view on this is all for re-recordings. I love re-recorded versions of the songs. I'm looking forward to the Sepultura stuff. Sodom, In the Sign of Evil is a classic example. Their EP from late 80s.
I hear that.
It's absolutely terrible, but it's classic. It's as Nick said, it sort of sets it in that time. But I love the re-recorded versions of the songs on that EP. They're brought up to date, but they've re-recorded it. I'm not worried about remasters and remixing and everything, but re-recordings, yeah, all day long. I love all that stuff. There's many that I could name, and the Sepultura ones are a good example. They were very raw, very basic, but they were of that time. But I'm looking forward to the sort of 21st century versions. But also, as Nick said, it is a marketing ploy. It's a bit of a money spinner as well. So again, it's one of those topics that people have got, dividing views on.
Yeah, so a lot of it's down to labels as well. So if the labels see it as an album that they want to read, they'll go for it.
I'm going to buy it no matter what. I don't care what you guys say. I'm going to buy it.
That's true. What about buying albums that you've already bought? Buying a remaster of an album that you've already paid for once.
Which clearly you've done with Revolver, but I'm guessing you've got one on CD and that's the vinyl.
No, well, I'm waiting for my dad to die because then I'll get his LP collection.
Still have the original one. He'll have the original 12. Yeah, okay.
Then I can compare them, and then I'll come back to you.
Does your dad what? Is your dad going to watch this?
I doubt it. He's not. I love you, Dad.
Oh dear. Okay. So that was the last final question from as far as our planned list. So now it's around the houses. So Andy, myself, and of course Kirk have already given our responses last month on our favourite singers and of course our favourite Hertfordshire bands. So we're going to throw it over to you guys. Last time we tried to guess with our guests who we thought your favourite singers were. I have no idea for any of you guys who I think your favourite singers are going to be.
Come on.
I know who Nick says.
What is it?
We had a conversation. It's Mike Patton.
Well
He's
done.
One of them. We had a conversation about it.
I've got like a top three, but that's one of them, mate. Well done.
I was going to go with Celine Dion, but okay, fair enough.
Whenever I hear that name, I think of Dijon mustard, and I don't know why.
I guess Andy, Kirk, have you got any other guesses for any of the guys? I'm completely at a loss on guesses.
Yeah, for Mike, I'm going to go for Jens Kidman, Meshuggah, as one of your favourite vocalists. Even though he's quite one-dimensional, he's very powerful.
Okay,
definitely up there.
Guess.
I'm going to say would say John Lennon or Paul McCartney, but anybody else could be anything really. No, I can't throw anything else.
No, okay. So
Nick, I can't even guess for Richard.
So Nick, you said you had three, so we might as well go back to you. So Nick, you. talked about you've got Mike Patton.
Yeah, Mike Patton's one. I'm at the moment. It's actually a band that I've only got into recently. Is Evergrey.
Okay.
I like Thomas England's vocals. I think they're really good. Also, I got his bloody name. The singer from Symphony X.
Oh, hang on, let's Google.
Russell Trevor.
Bob.
Is it Russell? No, not Russell Allen. Is it Russell Allen?
Plews.
He's got two first names.
Russell Allen. Yeah, Russell Allen.
Yeah, and then I'd say Corpse Grinder for harsh vocals. I think there's second to none with that delivery. I mean, I'm not a massive Cannibal Corpse fan, but just live watching him with his massive neck,
Fair enough. Gee,
it's a sight to behold.
He's gone.
Walked off. He's
Hello.
gonna get an album.
Go on,
T-shirt.
G.
Obviously, there's lots of things to take into consideration here. If I was going to go for a bullpen thing, it would obviously be Freddie Mercury, but that's gay. So, oh, hang on.
No, you can't say that.
Careful. Wait.
That's obvious. Now, I would probably say Devon Townsend.
Yes.
But on a separate rut, have you ever heard Gene Pitney sing?
Yeah.
Gene Pitney.
Gene Pitney, 24 Hours from Tulsa. If I could sing like, gorgeous,
Interesting.
that would be Gene Pitney. Other than that, if I had to do death metal, it would be Cryptopsy.
Lord Worm.
Lord Worm.
Well, from None Survival. And
Absolutely.
And
Probably my favorite death metal album of all time.
where it literally sounds like he's just, because you've read the lyrics to the album and trying to follow it.
I've lived my life by them.
It's quite. I was about 15 when I first heard that. It just sounds like it sounds quite dramatic.
I like it. I'm going to do that.
It's probably the heaviest album of all time, that as well.
Absolutely.
That is not a gateway album into metal, put it that way. You don't show that to a 15-year-old. This is a genre of music you might like.
I was 3 years or so into playing drums and I heard that, and it ruined me, and it's been downhill ever since.
Next time I do any Kate Bush live, I'm just going to do that vocal over that.
Yeah. What?
Okay. Let's go to Richard. Who's your favourite singer?
Oh god, man, hard to pick one. Loads of singers that I like. I had to write a few down because I can never fucking remember. But in terms of the heavy stuff, Phil Bozeman from Whitechapel, deathcore band, he's absolutely mental. Definitely like a sick inspiration for like hearing like a thing on record or a frontman and being like, man, I want to do that, you know. Mitch Lucker from Suicide Silence, I always thought was really cool. I really like Frank Carter from Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes and Gallows. Even though he's like doing way more singing now, which I think is really cool, but I can't sing for shit, so it's a tricky one. But and CJ from Thy Art Is Murder, always fucking incredible, makes some amazing noises come out of that man's mouth that I like listening to.
Can I add another one? Sorry, but I'm gonna have to say Phil from Countless Skies.
Oh god, yeah, 100%. Yeah. He's phenomenal.
Voice, yeah. Blown away first time I heard that.
He reminded me of he reminds me of the, I can't remember his name, Vortex from Dimmu used to be in Dimmu Borgir, right?
Yes, Vortex, yeah.
Yeah, and that was what I likened him to like straight away, and it was just fucking incredible.
Yeah, what an arsehole.
What an absolute arsehole, right? and he plays bass at the same time. God.
It works with me now in my normal job, and I'm going to tell him that I call him an arsehole tomorrow. But yes, sorry, I'll shut up. Carry on.
There you go. Let's throw it to Mike. Come on, Mike.
Pretty generic answer for me, to be honest, but always has been, probably always will be. It is James Hetfield from Metallica for me.
Okay.
Just because I think that was like my gateway metal band, and like initially hearing his voice and then how it's kind of developed. I know it's a bit corny now, but I don't know. There's something about it. I've always really liked the way James sort of accentuates certain syllables, and the
delivery is second to none, and I don't think many other bands have matched it, or many other vocalists have matched it. Would you agree, Mike?
No one else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as a performer as well, like even as a rhythm guitar player, while he's doing it, it's just
Yeah,
pretty world class. So
I think anyway, even if people don't like Metallica, you've got to admit that Hetfield's vocal is phenomenal.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
he's the man, right? Yeah. And it feels like in his sort of latter, like in the past few years, it's been getting a lot stronger, you know.
Yeah.
He's kind of had a few dips, but he's really like sounding great now. So
Yeah, whenever they put out a live video, you'd be like, Hetfield's vocals are still like on point, you know.
But Hetfield's the only one really putting it in, you know, and making it work in time as well. Not
for sure. I think maybe for like, I guess a more modern like metal vocalist, I've always really loved Howard Jones just for his kind of his operatic cleans and, you know, his really, I mean, even like his high screams, man, like the range he's got in all facets is just amazing. So,
and you know that
Jones as well.
That band I mentioned earlier, Moontooth, I keep banging on about. The vocalist in that, John Carbone, the New York band. Honestly, guys, check it out because their vocals are off the charts. It's really, really well executed. So yeah,
Nice.
I don't work for Moontooth at all. So, you know.
No promotion.
really into Sleep Token at the moment.
When I get into a band,
Sleep Token's cool.
Yeah,
Okay. Let's get back to the last question, which is also about your favourite Hertfordshire metal band on the scene at the moment. There are lots to pick from. There is a lot that we all love, but who's your band at the moment? Which is, if you see that they're playing, you're like, yeah, I'm definitely going to be there. I'll move things around to make sure I can get to that gig. Let's go to Mike first on this one.
I'm not 100% sure if they're Hertfordshire, but can we say like local or is it?
Yeah, go for the local bands then if you're not too sure where they're from.
I've got a few kind of knocked about in my head, but if I had to pick one, it would be Muskill for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was
In terms if I'm gonna go, I mean, just amazing band, really great.
Yeah.
Love what they do. I've always been a bit of an old school thrash guy as well. Like you don't really hear it in Kadama, but what they're doing is so cool. So
Mike, you and me are on the same page, mate. Well done.
Who else you can say, Mike? You had a couple. You said.
Everyone, the other bands I had on my list were Earthbound. Love what those guys do. Really kind of epic, big sounding live. There's another band we've been playing with recently called Swarmed. I think they're in Metal to the Masses.
Oh, they played on Sunday.
Yeah, I really like what they're doing. And one other band I like to shout is a band called Revelry. They're like a metalcore band. I think they're Watford based. Really, really good. Really riffy. They got a full album out on Spotify as well. So definitely give that a spin. So those would be my picks.
Okay, let's throw it to Richard before we go to Nick and G, because you guys are going to probably give us loads. So let's go to Richard first. And Rich, I've said you can't pick bands that you're in. So that's,
God, bands that I'm in.
It narrows it down for us.
Yeah, I do enjoy seeing the bands that I'm in. They're my favorite bands. To be honest, I'm a big Countless Skies fan, man. I absolutely love Countless Skies.
Yeah.
Whenever they're playing, I'll try and get down and see them. Really, I like Denali a lot, not just because James is in Dreadbagger, but also they're really good. So there you go. There's a Denali record.
Promo.
Yeah. Everest Queen, 100%. Absolutely adore Everest Queen. Not just because Tom's in the band, who happens to be in Praetorian, which I'm also in, but yeah. I also happen to be really like Everest Queen.
Nepotism at its finest.
There was another one.
There's a band that we haven't mentioned, Ritual. What a band!
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah. There was another one, but I've completely forgotten. So, Existentialists. We played a show with them, and I thought they were fantastic.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, let's throw it to G and Nick for your final thoughts on bands. Then.
Can you stop poking me, So I've got to be careful with this because I want to remain neutral because the competition is still panning out. So there are bands within the competition which I really rate, but I'm not saying anything. But from bands that you've mentioned already, like Countless Skies, Earthbound, Denali, 100%, and Muskill, like you said, Mike. Awesome bands, really, really put in the time and effort to absolutely smash out the park. So yes, those are mine. As I say, there are other bands, but be involved in the competition, I'm not going to be saying anything more.
Okay, fair enough. How about yourself, G?
Right, well, I mean, there's such a wealth of great stuff in our local community, you know. I really do think we're very lucky to be living in this kind of bubble where this community is so tight knit and loving it. And like Nick, there are certain bands that I'm going to mention that. Well, I'm going to say Buried on Sunday. I really love these guys, but I did teach two of them to play guitar. So,
I see. So,
yeah, I know.
So are you claiming that because of you teaching them? That
Yeah, basically, it's all because of me. They're a great band.
Right.
Obviously.
I agree with you. We've interviewed them for the channel.
And a Lowdown, I really like their stuff. God, I mean, how long have we got?
You got about 3 minutes.
Yeah, right. All of them. Lowen, I really enjoyed you guys when you played. You were at the Jaeger stage, weren't you?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I fucking really enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you, man.
Earthbound, gotta give a shout out to them guys. They are on point.
Yeah.
Should I go further?
Oh,
Yeah, couple more, G.
yeah, at least 10.
Is that Gévaudan? No, that's Earthbound. Wrong band.
One of my favourite local bands.
Did you
I
hear of it?
know they're a bit alternative metal.
Oh,
Oh,
no, you're going to
they're
trigger
not.
me.
No, they're not. Put me in a genre, G.
I am triggered.
And slightly out of the metal zone is India and the Vegas. They just tick all my boxes. They're not heavy, but if they did do heavy, I reckon I would probably orgasm.
Okay. That's quite alarming. Will you have a bucket next year?
Maybe.
Yeah, well done. That was
There
common.
you go.
Done.
Oh, you got through
Fair
it.
enough.
Yeah.
Well, there were some good bands that mentioned there. So
We just didn't mention Vex though, did we? I mean, I don't know why they never get mentioned. Is it because they're signed to Napalm Records? They just
Because they do it really bloody well.
You're no longer a Hertfordshire band. They're a great band.
Well, no, they're doing really well. We bumped into them at a show down in, where was it? I think it was Portsmouth. No, it was bloody Newquay. We were playing down Newquay with, I think it was with Napalm Death. I can't remember. Anyway, we bumped into them at a gig, and they were playing the same show as us, and they're doing really well. Lovely people. And Megan, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. New album coming out in 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah. And fair play to them. Happy days.
And shout out to Orm as well, who just put out their debut.
Oh, yes.
Fantastic. If you're into drone.
1 hour and 45 minutes of drum metal.
Yeah, one song on each
2
CD is
songs,
brilliant.
2 songs, yeah.
One song, yeah. 2 CDs, 2 songs.
Say that the logo isn't squiggly enough.
Great artwork there. Yeah,
You did the artwork, yeah.
yeah he did that. Yeah.
I can read it. That's the problem.
Yeah. Right. Before we
Thanks,
go,
big
we should
fan.
any other shouts? We have got the shout obviously before the Sirens' new music video drops tomorrow, which is Low for their new single. So please make sure you check that one out. Anyone else got any other announcements as other bands and things dropping over the next week?
What you just said, big up them.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And please be nice about the video because I filmed it. So yeah, be polite.
I know I don't like it anymore.
No.
If you say it's shit, I'm gonna find you. All right.
Who's playing at the next Metal to the Masses? Does anyone know off the top of their heads?
I do.
This weekend.
Herod on Sunday are playing, aren't they?
No.
We have
Broken
Galore,
Toes.
Hereward, Broken Tooth,
Acadian headline.
and As Vengeance Falls, and
Yeah.
Acadian on headline.
Yeah, okay.
Brilliant.
I will be there on Sunday.
Hey, I will
Hey.
not be there. No, I'm just kidding.
Andy, you're not at this one, are you?
All depends if we make it back from Worcestershire. We're me and Leslie have been invited by Planet Fatal to attend Breaking Bands Festival at Stoke
Nice.
Pride, near Bronze Grove, I think it is. Spectral Dark Wave are there as well, so that should be a good day.
Another shout out, Spectral. Yeah.
Oh,
Good band.
But yeah,
Great
when
band.
you go to Worcestershire, can you bring me back some sauce?
Yes, of course.
I bet.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Right. Well, thank you very much to obviously Richard, Mike, G, and Nick for joining us. Andy and Kirk, well, you have to. Unfortunately, you got told you had to be here. And everyone, please, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on another video next week.
Let's-
Bye.
See you guys. See you soon.
You.
Farewell.
Cheers.